He will deconstruct one cinematic, especially focusing on a real-time effect, or a fire tornado effect, to demonstrate advanced VFX authoring techniques in Unreal Engine. That's a bit of a mouthful, I apologize. All the VFX artists in the audience, prepare to take notes because this is very important. And welcome, Csősz.
Hello. Let me just open this real quick. And the remote, please. Oh, cool. So, hello everyone. My name is Gergő. Today we are going to talk about cinematic VFX, but more specifically, well, the ones that need to run in real time, in a cutscene or during gameplay. The presentation will be a bit technical, just a quick heads up. But first, a short introduction of me. So as I said, I'm Gergő Csősz. I'm the lead VFX artist at Digic Studios. I've been in the industry for 8 years now. I started out as a tech artist, learning the ins and outs of Unreal Engine, as well as learning Houdini for procedural content generation at first. After a while, I got involved in making VFX, and I liked it so much that it became my thing. Ever since then, I've been doing VFX and learning new techniques on and new possibilities on how to bring cinematic effects into actual gameplay efficiently. This is the effect that we're going to dissect on how it was made, and we'll talk about all of its parts. Let's view it once and we'll see how it's going to work. Okay, but first things first. The scene was created and assembled entirely in Unreal. The tornado flipbook was created in Embergen. For those who don't know yet, Embergen is a pyro simulation software that runs in real time. No need to wait for simulations like in Houdini. The tornado then transitions from the simple one into the flaming tornado. That transition, which we will talk about later, was initially made in Houdini, but then I migrated the entire workflow into Illugen. Their implementation worked the same as mine, but theirs was a whole lot faster and easier to process. Okay, so what is the actual challenge here? Well, for cinematics, the main goal is to achieve film quality VFX, sometimes even with real-time interactions, but always with good performance. There is always a constant balance between visual complexity, memory usage, shader instruction count, and art directability. Most of the time, there will be trade-offs. You'll just have to choose which one will be those. The solution is to think like technical artists. By deeply understanding how the engine handles data, we can design efficient, creative solutions that deliver maximum visual impact for low performance cost. Now, let's dive in how it is made. Did I just press that? Yeah. So, this is the breakdown of a sample texture that we will be talking about in much more detail. So, most of the textures that the effect uses will be data-driven textures, meaning they provide information to the shader instead of just colors. The effect's primary way to lighting is a set of baked light directions, which are called 6-point lighting. Basically, this texture and that. These two textures are just one frame from the entire flipbook, broken down into channels that we can see how they are. They provide baked high-quality light propagation through the volume. So the red channel is for the light coming from the top, green is from the left, blue is for the right at this point, and the other texture, when broken down, is red for the bottom, lighting, green is for the back, and blue is for the front. By lerping through these directions in the shader, we can achieve actually high-quality light propagations without the need of importing heavy assets like VDPs into Unreal. As a pro tip, there's an alternative way to create these kind of lighting bakes, which is called a four-way lighting. it's a newer, a bit more efficient way of doing this, which is now the default implementation in Houdini Side Effects Labs game tools. Most of the time, I prefer the 6-point method because this is the default in Embergen, but also because it's much easier to debug if something goes wrong, or I don't know, like the 4-way setup's efficiency isn't that much better compared to the 6.1. So, how do we get these types of textures? We can bake them inside of Houdini, of course, or we can use Embergen, which is much simpler and a lot faster. Here's a screenshot of the actual node graph of the tornado made in Embergen. It takes only a few types of forces and some simulation parameters to create this awesome tornado effect. And the best part is that the simulation runs in real time. This effect was made on a 2080 Ti, which is now a 5-year-old GPU, and it still handles real-time simulations in Embergen very efficiently. I won't dive deep on how to use Embergen currently, because we don't have time for that. There are plenty of tutorials on how to use, especially on their own Discord server, but I highly recommend it for VFX artists, because it saves a lot of time compared to Pyro simulations in Houdini. Additionally, Embergen provides a bunch of passes that we can export and use in our effect. But how we will save video memory if we import a bunch of 4K textures? The answer is that we don't import such high-res textures. There's a clever way to optimize these, because not all textures need to be as high-res as the others. Let's see them one by one. The first texture is the emissive for the fire effect. We keep this texture in 4K, and we use DXT1 compression. Yeah, okay. DXT1 compression, which compresses only the RGB values and doesn't allow alpha channels. By using this, we save a bit of memory here. Yeah, I told it was going to be a bit more technical. Cool. Next is the first and second 6-point texture. We use the same compression method, but reduce the resolution to 2K because we don't need as high resolution textures for lighting a foggy volume. Next is our normal. While BC5 compression is the default when importing normals into Unreal, it is not what we want in this case, because by default it discards the blue channel to keep the RNG values as high res as possible, while computing the blue channel under the hood. To be able to pack the effect's alpha mask into the blue channel, we can use BC7, which is a highly, where is it? Yeah, okay. BC7, which is a high fidelity compression method, but also has the ability to keep the blue channel while compressing. Modern hardware is powerful enough to effortlessly use BC7 compression, but this is not available for mobile and some other platforms. To get back our normal map's blue channel, we can calculate it in the material with the node-derived normal Z. We also keep the resolution as 2K. Last is the motion vector texture, which can use the same BC7 compression, since we need only the red and green channels from it, so that we can pack the depth and texture into the blue channel. We do this so that we can later deform a subdivided plane in order for our effect to be more grounded in the scene and to have a bit more volume. This can be very low res, like a 512 by 512 resolution for simulations like this that are viewed from afar. The downside appears when the flipbook is slowed down. So like pixelated low-res UV movement can be seen, but this can be taken into consideration when creating such an effect, like in this example. This isn't even noticeable in this example, so I just went with this. For faster movements like this, it is totally acceptable. Another good idea why to use BC7 here is because we already have a very low-res texture, which is, as I said before, 512 by 512, for which we can get a better looking compression in this manner, rather than using other cheap compression methods. With other methods, it would look overly pixelated. The flipbook provides the shape, but Niagara gives it life. Simple, efficient dittered mass particles instead of the ones what makes it much more sand-like, while also making it more efficient to render. Using dittered mask materials is a really good way of producing particle effects that don't need sharp details, and they move fast compared to the actual scene. This also goes hand in hand with temporal anti-aliasing. These particles create the swirling sand and dust that ground the tornado it's in environment. This adds also an essential layer of secondary motion, dust, and chaos that sells the entire scene. A great cinematic moment needs a narrative beat. For this effect, it was the transformation. A mysterious fireball appears slowly at first, trying to penetrate the tornado's surface. The fireball gets angry and slams into the tornado aggressively, triggering a dramatic and violent transition into a vortex of fire. Sometimes effects don't need to make sense, but if they give strong feedback, we feel like it's working. Like in this example, why would this fireball would want to ignite the tornado? Who knows, but it doesn't matter because the feedback is clear. It's cause and effect. Why is this transformation is so interesting? Because the effect uses a looping texture entirely, so that the entire sequence can be played even in the background, like for example, until the player reaches a certain trigger or in a cutscene. But also because the way the transformation is made. So let's see how it was that done. This is called alpha value accumulation. What we see here is DjangoFX's new software called Illugen, which we'll go through the process real quick on how this functions. First, we import our emissive flipbook texture into Illugen from Embergen. Next, and decode its red channels. We use the red channel here from the emissive texture because fire mostly contains red values, so that we can work it with it much more easily. Decoding the Illugen's textures in this context means it plays the flipbook in the viewport and also gives the ability for some tweaks. This is where we need to flip the decoding so that it plays backwards. More on that later. Next, we need to adjust the levels. I'm here, right there. We need to adjust the levels to get a sharper edge for the mask. Finally, we use the sheet encode node, which is that one. No, that one. Sorry, I was pointing at the wrong one. Okay, with accumulate ticked on. Sheet encoding means it will write back the flipbook frames that we modified, but by ticking accumulate on, it will actually write each frame grayscale texture on top of the previous one, thus accumulating grayscale textures. As we can see in the moving preview here, very important to reverse the flipbook animation when decoding, because we'll be using subtraction in the shader to animate this. If we don't reverse the flipbook, in the decode node here, the masking will play backwards, and in the shader, of course, we don't want that. So, I became aware of this technique at a Houdini Tech Art GDC talk for a game called Sea of Thieves, where they demonstrated this to accumulate pirate vomit on surfaces. Yeah, it was gross. But it was really, really fun. Since then, I successfully used this accumulation technique, not just for translations like this one, but also animated blood decals, which flow off walls and more. In theory, this can be used to store 255 frames of an animation with a single grayscale channel. In reality, its use is very limited, but it can be very effective in certain situations. Inside Unreal, if we animate the transition value, we can see how we step through the accumulated frame date data. The top line is there to mask the top line there. Is there to mask out the highest portion of the texture, since I want to start the fire from the bottom of the tornado, like there, you know. So we don't need the top part at first. When it reaches a certain value, I remove the top mask and then continue stepping. Finally, it reaches 0.8, at which point I fade it into white completely to fade into the emissive tornado texture. I use these grayscale values to blur between the two tornado textures. By accumulating the grayscale values over time, we can lerp from the tornado flipbook to the fire tornado flipbook. This creates a far more organic and cinematic reveal, as the fire appears to burn away the texture dynamically. It's a highly efficient and art-directable solution. If we turn off the bloom, like in this example, we can clearly see how it looks like. Without bloom and by viewing only frame by frame, the masking might appear janky, but in motion, it sells the look. Stepping through it frame by frame might not look as good as we'd like, but running it in real time, it looks great for cinematics, and that's what matters. Volumetric fog, camera shake, lens dirt, and bloom also helps to ground the effect even more. The result is a highly efficient and great looking effect. Basically, we need to strategically lower our textures resolutions, while also cleverly use channel packing. This approach works for any type of effect that mimics volumetric look, but the exact resolutions for each texture might differ based on use case. If your scene requires a sharp looking volume, instead of a foggy cloudy like this one, you might have to bump up the 6-point textures to 4K2. Or if your effect is a fast moving volumetric thingy, you might need a higher resolution motion vector texture here. You have to make adjustments on which resolution to use per effect. So, knowing what BC5 and other compression methods do under the hood allows us to use textures more efficiently. While generally BC7 might be a bit more expensive to compress and then to decompress, it's worth taking note of what is the target platform and what is our budget. In this case, using two BC7 compression methods, instead of packing the tornado alpha and depth into the alpha channel of the two 6-point textures was a better choice, because even though we lowered the resolution of the normal and the motion vector textures, this compression type gives us a better looking result even at such low resolutions. I added a concise cheat sheet down here for each information. DXT1 compresses only the RGB channels and discards the alpha channel, while DXT5 keeps it with a bit higher resolution, higher decompression cost. BC5, as we discussed previously, is the default compression method in Unreal for normal maps, which completely discards the blue channel on import. And calculates it back under the hood natively. This makes it one of the best looking red and green channels with low decompression cost. BC7 has a support for RGB channels with an optional alpha channel. It has a bit of higher compression cost than DXT1 and DXT5, but it retains small details better, so for some cases it might be a good idea to use it. For some time it was uniquely compatible with only DirectX 11, so like BC7, but nowadays consoles can use it too, like the PS5. Unfortunately, no mobile support, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Please don't misunderstand here what I'm trying to tell. Most of these compression methods are automatically selected by Unreal whenever you import a texture, so most of the time you don't need to think about any of this. But if you truly know what the pros and cons are, for highly technical details like these, among others, you can plan ahead way better on making best looking and best running effects. So what are the key takeaways here? Technical insight empowers artistic vision. Understanding the engine allows you to invent new visual possibilities. Textures are data. think beyond of color and opacity. An 8-bit channel can be a timeline. A wasted compression channel is a free data slot. Master your engine. Knowing what BC5 and other technical features do under the hood allows for clever tricks and hacks like packing data into the normal Maps Blue channel. Smart optimization and channel packing are essential for achieving real-time cinematic quality with good performance. And the last key thing to mention here is to learn as much tech art related thing as possible, even as a VFX artist. It will come in handy. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was beautiful and